Hi, everyone. It's really wonderful to see you all here for what's going to be a really fascinating discussion on how AI can elevate your agency's performance. Firstly, if you haven't joined one of our webinars before or you haven't met me, I am Emma. I'm one of the founders of Spark, and I'm your host for this webinar. Just to give you a very quick overview of what we do at Spark, we're a team of creatives who are also AI experts, and we help agencies do even better work and grow by combining their creativity with AI. And we do this through masterclasses with agency leaders, with strategists and designers, and we've got more courses coming soon for the different areas of agency life. So today, I'm really excited to be joined by Tabitha and Charlotte. Let me just introduce them both to you. First, Charlotte Lavender. It's really great to have you here. Charlotte is a real innovator in the marketing world. She's got an amazing ability to grow, to drive growth through marketing transformation. Charlotte's worked at some of the most prestigious agencies in the world, Saatchi's, BBH, Publicis, and she specializes in advising clients on integrating digital data and AI capabilities into marketing functions. Doing that, she's optimized marketing operations for global brands like Heineken, Ford, and JLL, which she did in-house. And she's been sharing her expertise with SMEs and larger clients for around 5 years now to drive business growth through marketing. So welcome, Charlotte.
Hi, thanks.
Thank you. And alongside Charlotte, we're really delighted to have Tabitha Winter here as well. Tabitha, your experience is so topical for a discussion today. Let me just tell you all a bit about Tabitha. So Tabitha spent 25 years working both in agencies and for brands, helping creative teams essentially work better and smarter. So spot on for what we're talking about today. She's an expert at improving how creative departments run, whether they're in-house or in agencies. And these days, she's all about using AI to help teams work more efficiently and get much greater results. Tabitha's worked with all kinds of clients from small businesses to global brands and really specializes in helping to streamline processes and training teams in how to do that too. And particularly, as I said, with AI these days. So what an amazing panel we got today. So let me take a breath and then we will get started. Fab. So as we go through, I think we're going to talk for around half an hour. We'll see how it goes. We may have more to say. So we'll see where we get to. As we go through, feel free to put any questions in the chat under this LinkedIn event, and we'll try and answer them as we go. If we don't get to answer them as we're talking, because we're busy talking, we'll answer them afterwards, and you'll get a notification of our answer. Fabulous. So first of all, guys, in the creative process, how do you see AI either enhancing or accelerating specific activities, or enhancing I guess there's two sides to it. There's enhancing creativity and there's making stuff faster are the two key things that AI really helps us with. And how do you see that, just to open up the conversation? Charlotte, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. I think it does both, actually. And I think really key to that is being able to determine, first of all, kind of where the human value comes from in the whole creative process and where we can accelerate the kind of more of the grunt work, I guess. Not to undermine the value of that grunt work, but it's definitely something that we can remove with AI and allow ourselves to focus on the more interesting part, I guess. And I think one of the key things on that is creative concepting. So that process in agency between client and agency, where you've sold the idea and you're looking at kind of how you bring those concepts to life executionally, becomes really quite arduous many times. And you need really tight account management around that, which needs to still remain, and that relationship building. But I think actually the things that we can do with Midjourney in terms of mocking things up, so old days of scamping, but actually mocking them up at speed, putting voiceovers on through AI, really means that, you know, you're reducing a process that can take 3 or 4 weeks with feedback rounds to a couple of meetings, which is extraordinary. So that really takes some of that kind of process away, and then enables the creatives to really feel much more empowered to come up with the big creative ideas. I think also in that process, you know, if you're looking at kind of Google Ads or first draft of a messaging framework, then again, AI is fantastic. I still hold the creative brief absolutely sacred. And I think that is where the human value comes in, because I think that is the problem solving. What business problem are we trying to solve? The insights that come around that. And so, you know, I'm sure in 5 years we'll be looking at that differently too. But I feel that that's where the real human value comes, as well as the kind of creative ideation.
Absolutely. What do you think, Tabitha?
Well, I mean, Charlotte covered it really well. I completely agree with all of that. I think I always liken it to the AI sandwich, where the human input and the human value and the human creativity is the bread, and AI is the meat in the middle. You know, you have to add in the really good inputs, and you have to be able to curate the outputs, but the stuff in the middle can be done at speed. And AI is really good with analyzing so much more data than any human being can do in a very, very short amount of time, creating things like meeting notes and action points and who said what and what you should do, and building the status report out of that and building the feedback out of that. And, you know, you can use it not to take over anyone's job, but to perform the tasks that, let's be honest, most agencies ended up giving away for free, because otherwise it would have pushed the estimate too high, right? So that's kind of how I view AI. It's always there, but it needs to be between human input and human curation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I use that analogy a lot, and I think there's nothing like a good analogy to sink in a concept. Yeah.
No, my analogies always stem around food. I don't know quite what it is.
I'm writing down the AI sandwich now.
Good. I wondered if either of you have a kind of like an example of what you've described there, like from your experience, of how AI has helped streamline any of those stages of creative production.
Sure. Yes. I mean, I'm sure we both got loads of examples.
I'm using the time to think of mine. Yes.
Yeah. So a specific one that I was involved with, we had a kind of series. We were working with Bloomberg across a series of, they were the media partner, a series of executions for a B2B business. And there, you know, you could have shot it and so forth, but we weren't doing that. We were using stock footage, keeping costs down, but also the whole piece around, you know, multiple stakeholders in a really complex organization of 90,000 people, very differing agendas. So you can imagine navigating that would take an extraordinarily long time, and a very differing ability to jump executionally to envisage what you're going to see. So actually being able to use Midjourney to show what those storyboards were going to look like, to put copy against them all, copy written by a copywriter, I hasten to add, but images very much found through AI, and then also put a VO over that. I mean, that saved 4 weeks, 20% of the budget. And I think the really big thing there is that you know, our remuneration models in agencies are spent hours. It's based on hours, right? Time spent. And so there's this kind of slight conflict of interest that is this tension where AI, to everything Tabitha was saying earlier, is going to really allow us to be far more efficient and effective and work at speed. And then there are some people going, well, then we're not going to be paid. But actually, in the particular case I'm talking about, it meant that 20% we saved, we could reinvest in something else for that client. So I think that's what people also need to hold on to. But certainly, I'm sure Tabitha has examples as well. It absolutely streamlines that process.
And I think that's really important. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Tabitha. I was just going to say.
Sorry, I shouldn't have started talking straight away. But yeah, the example I'm thinking of is a large in-house creative studio that I set up and ran for a few years. And we had effectively 5,000 clients, which when, you know, they're of all sorts of differing levels. At least when you're in an external agency, you tend to work with the CMO or the marketing director, whereas we were working with the most junior marketeer on the team as well as the very most senior one. And when I first took on the team, we were receiving upwards of 6,500. I'm going to call them requests because, let's be honest, they weren't really briefs. They were requests every month. And we go back to the brief is sacred, but sometimes it's not very good. And we managed through automation and through using AI to create multiple versions of the same ad for different platforms at different sizes with different messaging in different languages for different markets with different, you know, call to actions that worked in specific markets over others. And we allowed the marketeers direct access to that. So it took some learnings. The marketeers were scared of the responsibility and the creatives were scared of releasing creative control. But once we got to a really good place, we got the marketeers producing, we would produce the key graphic and the key concept and the key. So again, human creative input. Then the marketeers would be able to automate the formatting of that for the different markets, different languages, different CTAs, different sizes, and that would flow out of the system directly onto all the platforms. And that reduced our load from 6,500 requests to 1,500 requests a month. So freed up all of our time. We were able to concentrate on much more creative things, service the big creative requests rather than, could you change the terms and conditions on this ad over here, please?
That's phenomenal.
Brilliant.
So you essentially deliver much better value for the client. And
much better value, as well as they still get everything they were asking for previously. You know, they still get all of that stuff. We're just not wasting creative manpower changing text on an ad.
Yeah.
And a much happier team, I guess, doing what they enjoy. Yeah,
absolutely.
Those really bring it to life. Thank you both for sharing those examples. Fab. So I just want to bring us on to have a think about the kind of nuts and bolts of project timelines and resources as well. And we've kind of touched on that a little bit with your examples, but like, where do you think AI is making the biggest difference, the biggest impact in managing timelines specifically, and like all with managing resources? Maybe we've kind of, your examples covered more like about deliverables and how we can do more or better or closer collaboration with different teams. So you use the teams to their best purposes. Tabitha, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to do the thing I always tell people not to do. I'm going to be totally non-specific. I'm very much about the specifics. But in truth, everywhere. If you look at timeline creation and even prediction, you know, where you can use certain tools that can highlight when bottlenecks are coming up. If you consider resource allocations, if you've spent the time to feed into the system about who can do what and who can do what really well as what all their capacity allocations are, you can use AI-driven resourcing tools to assign work auto-magically, if you like, to those individuals because they are best placed to do that. Again, another one of my analogies, but it's like having a really, really seasoned traffic or project manager in your back pocket who's able to just do things that you can then look at guiding and correcting once they've been done rather than doing it from scratch the first time round. Oh, and even when you do use AI, you have to check it. You have to curate it because it still hallucinates even when it's given a specific task.
Back to the AI sandwich.
Yeah.
And did you say auto magic?
Yes, I did.
It's a great word.
I
don't know how I haven't heard that before. It's fantastic. Okay.
It's a me phrase. Yeah.
Love it. Charlotte, have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, just to build on something that Tabitha said, I think your point around checking it is absolutely key because conversations I've been having recently with people, they'll put something in to AI, will generate something for them. They then take it off, tweak it, and then use it, but they don't feed it back in. So you're not feeding the prompting. And I think, you know, if we had an intern or somebody that you were training to do something, you would allow them to do it themselves. Obviously, you'd kind of give them the objective and off they go and do it, but you would feed back and you'd coach in the areas that they have less experience in. And so I think we have to think about AI in that way as well, and make sure that we're constantly refeeding back into it. I think on timelines and you know, and how to manage those across teams, Tabitha will have much more expertise and experience in that area. But I think resource-wise, one of the things that I found AI has been fantastic at, particularly for global organizations, is being able to put a kind of talent platform in place. And I don't mean the massive talent management platforms that go out, which does all the appraisals and everything else, but more how you can very quickly cast a team of expertise, even from different cities across the world, to bring a team together for a client with a specific problem. And I think I've seen that working really effectively in some of the agencies that I've been in leadership roles or have been consulting with. So that's certainly one of the benefits, rather than that thing where you're trying to, you know, cross P&Ls and ask for people on certain projects and when they finish something else. So yeah, I think that's definitely a massive improvement.
That's really interesting. So you can bring globally the very best resource for that specific.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's about knowing where they are and what their skills are, and really easily.
Of course, it relies on what we've all been saying. You have to make sure like anything, the data, the insights only come from the quality of the data, right? And how robust the data is. So we still have to remember to do that. And I think that's also one of the things, you know, without going on too much of a tangent, that we're seeing in the job market, where people are writing very basic descriptions for jobs. And if it doesn't exactly hit on it, you know, the nuances are lost. And I think we just need to make sure that when we're looking for talent within our own organizations, we're very clear about what it is people can offer and allow the nuances within that. Otherwise, we miss opportunities, right? We miss great castings for projects and so forth.
If I may, just revisit your point of the brief is paramount. The brief is sacrosanct. You know, you are briefing a system. You're writing a brief for a system. You wouldn't dream of writing a brief for an intern that consists of 2 lines. You would give context and background. You have to brief the system.
Yeah, I think that's really key point, and I think that's something that I'm finding a lot through Spark, is that it's learning how to brief AI systems is a different way of briefing. You're not briefing an experienced colleague. You're yeah.
I think that's a great way to think of it.
Yeah, you're experienced a super intelligent intern that has on their first day in the office, I guess. Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. Brilliant. So we've already touched on how AI can help agencies manage the operational side of a creative project, but I wonder if we could just look a bit about how AI can more bridge the gap between creative and operational teams. We talked a bit through your example, Tabitha, about bridging the gap between creative and marketing teams. Tabitha, I wonder if you might particularly have experience here about sort of enabling that smoother collaboration between creative and ops.
Well, often what I find in more traditional teams, you will gain a producer or a project manager or a client service person either who has particular expertise in one area, who's writing a brief that potentially makes assumptions about what the actions might be in order to deliver the project itself. So I've often used AI to help me understand the brief and create an action plan, which I can then add to. And then I've created automations that will take that action plan and flow it out into a Gantt chart, into resource allocations and resource bookings, or making sure that everybody has the brief written the way they want it or the way they would understand it, for example. So you can use it to help that communication and that translation of things. But at the same time as it's doing that, it may as well develop the operational plan that you can also review. So where it's able to do both tasks in one. So I use, at this point in time, I use make.com. Which I love. I personally prefer it to Zapier, but they do very much the same thing. But you can, make it do multiple things off of one piece of information and solve the operational and the communication problems that way. balancing workloads, for example, talking about health and wellness of individuals and how their mental health is within a business. Agencies and in-house agencies are notorious for working incredibly long hours. AI can automatically, there's that word again, balance the workloads for them so that no one is over allocated, no one is needing to overwork, and we're still meeting timelines. And it can highlight where you have resource gaps or where you might need to freelance, hire in a freelance or whatever the case may be. So I think when most agencies are looking at AI at the moment, they are looking at it from the point of view of, how do I conceptualize with this? How do I use it to feed into my creative process? But if you can get the balance right between the creative and the operational, you can make sure that whole flow is seamless. And then you've got less frayed tempers and less people overworking. And so it's very much along the communication lines, but at the same time, it's making people's jobs easier.
Yeah, and that's a real unlocking. It's making people's jobs easier, and in that they're more able to be creative because they're not so overworked.
Yeah.
And I guess the AI sandwich bit of that is, if you're told who's been over allocated, it might be someone that doesn't feel able to speak up for themselves, and you can, as a leader, you can proactively then address that in a very human way. Yeah.
Or potentially they've even been over allocated with work that they are not best at doing, that potentially someone else should be doing, so that they can do what they need to do. And you can set those parameters in the brief you give AI and make sure that it highlights those for you.
Yeah.
I think I was just going to say that I think that is a monumental shift for the industry, because I think that the challenges we were saying earlier is that our remuneration model has been based on hours. And actually, as the model has shifted within organizations, we've integrated digital, we've integrated data. The remuneration model was manufactured way back when we were just doing kind of adverts, I guess, TV adverts and 48 sheet posters. And we've never right-sized ourselves. And because it's competitive, if anyone ever did it and led the way, so to speak, they'd remove their competition, right? Because clients were paying in a certain way. So actually what this does, finally, instead of putting sticking plasters on things, is allow us to completely revamp everything through the platforms that Tabitha's talking about, which is, breath of fresh air, given we know how people's workloads within the industry, people leaving, burnout and so forth. So I think, we didn't do it from a human perspective. At last, AI will allow us to completely shake it up again.
Absolutely. And I'm sure those tools will get better and better over time. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Although I would say, be careful of the ones you pick. There are so many at the moment, and they live and die in a day. They have a massive, and everybody jumps on them, and then they fail and they go away. Or one of the biggies buys them out and then they're gone. So pick your tools carefully to make sure that it's sustainable over a long time.
I think that's really good advice. I think this is a slightly Wild West time in terms of AI tools. There are so many coming onto the market, and it's going to settle at some stage. I think it's also picking them carefully, but also making sure you keep experimenting with what's best, rather than just sticking with one and closing your eyes to what else is around as the market evolves. So it's an evolving time. Sticking on the automation theme, just like to think on the other side, on the sort of creative process side. And Charlotte, you might be well positioned to think about this, but I just wonder where do you think are the most impactful areas in the creative process where AI can automate sort of the more routine or time-consuming tasks, perhaps in the AI sandwich format? But what in your experience, where have you seen it best?
Sure, I've got to get that word automagic in as well before we get started. Someone I once spoke to named it. I'll just drop it in. So I think I've talked a lot about concepting, and I think most organizations are doing that now. I think the other piece is around data analytics and also research. So certainly that process always felt quite laborious, having to analyze data coming out of research. And there are obviously platforms now, MindMeter, I think we talked about last time, that allow you to do that much more effectively. So I think you can get straight to insights about how to connect with audiences better. So that's definitely a help. And then I think also, well, we talked about intelligent prompting. I think really it is the concepting piece, and then also the research piece. The brief is sacred. However, I think AI gives us an opportunity to start triaging in a way that some organizations aren't as effective as doing as others. So, you know, if you have still got your big campaign, you know, we wouldn't get a BA. If you think about what the work BA is doing currently in the market, we wouldn't have got that if it was an automated brief, right? But if you're looking at Google Ads for a B2B organization and you've got your messaging framework, that can be done first draft through AI. So I think it's being mindful, again, going back to this piece we talked about at the start. It's the AI sandwich, right? Where do you want the auto magic? There you go, got it in. And where do you want the human value add? And I think that's where people need to start. The other thing, actually, just for those client services people and or project management, depending on how an agency structures itself, is scoping. So throughout my career, I spent a lot of time scoping projects or overseeing people scoping them, because that's obviously the beginning of, you know, the work that you're going to do in the ideation and the changing behavior through creativity and so forth. Is what's the time we're going to need. So obviously, to Tabitha's point, that now sits within a system which you can check and feed into. But I think that's an enormous help.
No, absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, there are so many aspects of it. Everything Charlotte has just said, but also, you know, even quality control. There are systems out there now that can take your brand guidelines and check anything that comes through the system as to whether or not it adheres to those brand guidelines for you. There's proofreading systems, you know, can do a first pass for you, highlight all the errors, and then a human can decide whether they're errors or not. You can, use it for creative concepting. You can use it for scamping. You can use it. There's so many applications. And that's where I come back to finding the one that you need now, finding the one that's right for you right now, and then becoming an expert in it, not just sort of using it for one project and thinking you can sell it on, actually becoming an expert in it and using it and integrating it into your workflow, building the team around it, getting the team comfortable with it, all those aspects. But yeah, I'm one of those awful people. Whenever anybody says to me, how can AI help? Well, it just can. We'll figure out how.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in both, just reflecting on what you both said, there's kind of a theme there about, I guess, the leadership being really clear on what AI should be being used for and not, and like the kind of guardrails as well. And, you know, it's not those big ideas. It's not the BA campaign, which is so phenomenal. And and where it's going to add the most value to their specific business. And I think it's a different answer for every agency, depending on their own positioning, I guess.
Yes, I would say even within the BA campaign, it's not going to be able to write that brief. It's not going to be able to write that creative strategy. It's not going to be able to do any of those things because it's not human and it doesn't inherently have creativity, even though there's that setting that says be more creative. It can't do that, right? But what it could do is take a prompt from a creative to build a scamp to create consistency in all the other scamps. That means you can take a mood board to a client in a short amount of time to show them where you're headed, so that you're not spending 6 days before the client tells you, actually, no, that's not what I want something different. You know, you can iterate faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I often find myself saying that AI is only as good as you are at your job, at your own job, or the person that's
Although I'll tell you what, it can illustrate a lot better than I can.
But maybe there are some exceptions, but I think it's, you know, you have to be really good at your job to get good stuff out of using AI as your collaborator, and so it does not take away that human creativity element. I said we're going to talk for half an hour. We're already at half an hour, but we're going to carry on a bit longer if that's okay with you both. So just thinking a bit beyond efficiency and more about growth now. Do you think AI is helping? Do you see it helping agencies with the growth of their businesses as much as kind of just I guess with efficiency, we're talking more about profit margins, but and people's happiness in not doing the grunt work. But yeah, what about growth?
Charlotte, I think you're far better placed than me.
Well, I'll try. I think profit margin absolutely through effectiveness, and I think if people try and think about AI as a model through effectiveness, efficiencies, and innovation, then I think those bottom two, or certainly efficiencies, is much more around the profit margin. I think effectiveness covers both, because you're driving effectiveness through your campaigns for your clients as well, which will generate more revenue and more work through them. But I think innovation is where the direct revenue growth area comes, because that's where people are innovating through AI as well. And I mean, we are in a creative industry, so when digital came into the world, we obviously started innovating with what we could do, on that basis as well, hence social media. And, that didn't exist when digital first came in. So I think innovation is where real revenue growth will come as people start to develop models and pilots. And there's lots of examples, particularly in the Southwest, where agencies have then started to create AI platforms or products which will help them with their work with their clients, which they've then actually gone, right, what am I doing now? Am I an agency, or am I going to grow and market this product? So I think we see that happening all the time, particularly in the smaller organizations.
Yeah, I've observed it exactly the same. And if we as creatives are not best placed to innovate, then yeah,
exactly.
One of the areas I suggest there might be, actually enhancing existing client relationships so that you can get more work off them. Because one of the biggest things I see client service people, or sometimes even project managers, do is building that status report every week, or building the action list out of last week's contact report or whatever. And if you've got AI helping you with that, not only are you having to do less is the wrong word, but do more with less, and your client is getting the information that they want, which gives them a sense of security and happiness that you are doing the work you promised to do. So yeah, I tend to try and automate all of those meeting notes and status reports and things like that.
But you're so right, because what that then allows you is that time you have back is to invest in that actual relationship, isn't it? Like the kind of bits about turning up on time. It's a bit like dating, I always think, like the turning up on time bit and the building that trust is there. The kind of going off and doing something exciting together, that kind of added value that you can give to that client in the time that you've got allows you to then start to identify more opportunities for work as well.
Yeah, so the AI automated status reports and related things, like that becomes like the backbone of the relationship. Yes. It's just like transparent and it's predictable, and you're always going to get that thing at 2:00 on a Friday, or that's so important for your client relationship. Yeah, fab. So something we haven't really talked about. We've talked about the tools and we've talked about the processes and where it can help, but we haven't we talked about people's happiness, but other than that, we haven't really talked about the kind of actual big change side of this. The kind of it's actually AI is a big transition. It's almost like a change management issue as much as it is a technology issue. The technology is going to keep changing over the next few years, but the fact that we need to adapt is going to be a constant. But these kind of operational changes often meet resistance, and that's not necessarily with particular roles, but it might be more personality based. Different people deal with change differently. And I just wondered if you had any perspectives on that, or what you would advise, I guess, agency leaders to help them encourage the sort of AI adoption change in their businesses. Charlotte, I know you got a lot of experience in transformation and change. I wondered if you have a perspective on this.
Yeah, I think like any change management, it's really important, some kind of clear principles around communication, taking people on the journey, having kind of an objective, identifying ambassadors within the organization, identifying potential detractors. Often that just comes from a place of fear. you know, when there is change, the first thing people tend to do is think, how's that going to impact my job? How's that going to impact my day to day? So I think having really clear comms around that as well. And I don't mean like cascading comms across the organization. I mean, thinking about how you're going to talk to people around that within teams as well. And then I think the flip side of that, once you've created that kind of safe environment, I guess, for people, is to then allow people to experiment, as you were saying, Emma, like, you know, with the creative industry, we're able to kind of innovate. That's the exciting part of our job. So, you know, encourage pilots or hackathons, but make sure that you have structured your model around the ability for the organization to be able to do that, and people feel free to do that. You know, celebrate failure. It's such a cliche, but it's so true. People need to feel safe to be able to fail. And when it's done well, then people fly with that. And as Tabitha said, you know, let's not be really magpie about it. Let's make sure that through that piloting, we're kind of making decisions around platforms. I think when it's not done well is when you see someone just go, as we were saying earlier, go out and experiment. You're like, okay, well, I need a bit of information around that. I need some training. I need to see what's, you know, let's get Spark AI in and give us a I think there needs to be some kind of groundwork around that as well. And I know Tabitha will have put that into practice with many of the people she's working with too.
Yeah, I mean, some of the, I think agencies particularly, but more and more in-house agencies, they shoot for the moon straight away. The first thing they do is want a moon on a stick. And we used to joke about how, you know, that was great because that was what won us all the clients. But if you do that within AI, you run the risk of not having a clear vision, not knowing where you're going, not finding that low-hanging fruit. Because if you can find something that AI can do that can benefit people really quickly, you're going to get buy-in faster. So hence things like the contact reports, resource allocation, the really low-hanging fruit that AI can just already do that makes people's lives better. And then they will buy into the bigger idea. But, you know, involving them early, all the usual change management things, making sure the conversation is right, giving them the right guardrails, and like pick one thing and get good at it, and then add another thing. Too many agency leaders and some in-house agency leaders that I come across will simply go, okay, we are going to brief this job for this client, and I want you to use AI.
Ooh.
How?
Yeah.
So just pull back a little bit and actually have a little strategy against it. You wouldn't answer a client's brief without any creative strategy or data-driven strategy or any kind of strategy. Have some strategy about how you're going to implement.
Completely agree. When we work with clients, we always first develop that vision and the guardrails you were talking about, but then develop a roadmap, which always starts with starting small. Like, what are the quick wins where we can test it in a really safe space and really test it before it goes anywhere near clients.
Let's be honest, in most agencies, that's timesheets, right? You can crack the timesheet problem, we're sorted.
It is, yeah. That is the essential problem. Yeah. I guess going to bring us to, I guess, on the subject of advice for leaders, for agencies just kind of starting to explore AI in their operations. What would be your top tips for implementing? We've talked about starting small. Have you got any others that would be like key takeaways for people tuning in?
Experimentation instead of perfection. You know, play with it and allow it to fail, as Charlotte said earlier. Investing in people, you may need very specific skill sets, and that might not exist within the team that you have already. Look at it and decide, is it working for you? And if it's not, try something else. You know, just because you're implementing it, just because you spent time and money implementing it, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, and it'll do more harm than good in the long run. But, you know, I think really look at it as a collaborator. Don't look at it as a answer to all the problems, a replacement for specific skill sets or roles. It's a collaborator. Again, the AI sandwich, it needs the human input and curation. It can't do it on its own.
I love that point about keeping an eye on it and making sure that it's still working for you. Like really measure, I guess, and that's like really the key to that is deciding what indicates that it's working before you start implementing it, and then measuring it, like deciding up front what you want to get out of it, and then making sure it's delivering. Charlotte, any thoughts on that one?
No, I think I agree with all of that. I think, to your point, Emma, it is about being really deliberate in the decision about where is the human sandwich, the AI sandwich, like where is the human bit and where is the AI bit. So I think once everything's opened up and you've experimented a little bit, and if that's the way you do it versus setting the boundaries first, then you need to bring that back in and really be clear on that. So I think that would be my main thing. And then I guess the other thing, and this is probably more of a concern for larger agencies, is just to make sure that it's not a kind of separate AI department, because everything we've all been saying, obviously, is that it's integrated across everything. So, you know, those status reports or the administrative piece sits in every part of the organization, really. So make sure that there's not just kind of a kind of hot AI team that sits on the side that people can consult. You know, it really needs to be integrated across everything that you're doing. And I think that was something we all learned, you know, when digital arrived. For those of us that you know, were on the scene before digital, then, you know, there was like a specialist team that you were part of, but actually it needs to sit across everything. And it's only now that we're kind of, you know, we're in a place where it's properly integrated.
Yeah, completely agree. And also, I guess on that, don't have your like one person who's the mid-journey expert. Like, make sure people are skilled across the teams, because then you don't get that collaboration advantage and you don't get that resilience in your organization. Okay, last question. If there is one thing that that you'd want people to take away, either for implementing AI or for the kind of change side of it, I guess thinking about planning for next year, November, key time for planning for what's happening in 2025. What would you say? What would you recommend?
I'd say put aside the fear and embrace change. So I think that it's a mindset thing. All the practical things that we've talked about are absolutely key, but I think there is a kind of mystique around AI. And with that comes fear. And so it's very easy for agency leaders to kind of, particularly of smaller organizations, to bury their head in the sand. And for larger ones to work out how to integrate it and where it sits and how to equip people and look at skill sets and all the things that we've been talking about. It's not going away. It's here to enhance the work that we do. And so I think just banish the fear and move forward with it and inform yourself. Other people don't necessarily know more. Just get out there and increase your knowledge.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think next year it's definitely the year for that. Yeah. Tabitha.
I mean, given what I do for agencies and brands, I think I would be remiss to not recommend installing an AI-driven powered project management and resource management tool. You know, I kept talking earlier about picking the low-hanging fruit, and actually operational inefficiency within an agency or a brand costs much more than just delayed projects and missing deadlines and things like that. It costs, you know, there's human costs, there's financial costs, there's all sorts of costs. So I would say get something in there that helps, you know, AI powered project management and resource management, get something like that in there. But yes, I agree completely with Charlotte, like, lose the fear. It's here to stay. And again, another sort of recollection right back from the beginning of my 25 years in this industry. People got really scared when desktop publishing came along, and it did get rid of the repro houses, right? The repro houses, for those who don't know them, were part of the print process, but it did get rid of them. You no longer needed repro houses, but those individuals became so much more skilled in something else. So it is a time for adaptation. There's no denying that. And there will be some costs to the implementation of AI, but embrace that and learn how to diversify rather than being terrified it's just going to steal your job.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is one of those industrial revolutions in a way that that have changed different sectors' jobs through history. So yeah, reskilling and adaptability and innovating is what we're really good at in this industry, and this is just another one of those. I was going to summarize key takeaways, but I think you've both just done that for me, so thank you. It saves me trying to decipher my scribbled notes on my notepad here. So I'm just to wrap up. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll send out some show notes for people that haven't been able to join us live, but if you haven't been able to join us live or your colleagues haven't been able to, this will remain up on LinkedIn to watch on demand. So you can tune in whenever you like. So this webinar is part of a series. It's the last one in the series, actually, that we created to sit alongside our AI masterclasses for agencies. You can see the previous webinars on our events page and our link on Spark's LinkedIn. I'm just going to tell you quickly about our masterclasses that we've just launched, and they will, let me just try and, I'm trying to speak and share a slide at the same time and it's not working, so let me just share the slide. So we run AI activation masterclasses, a half a day. They're for agencies just starting out on their AI journey. It's just a bit of information about them. We work with 4 agencies a month so that we can give you really tailored attention. The QR code will just give you, will take you straight through to book a 10-minute slot to have a chat about that. And what we have just launched, which I'm really excited about, is our AI accelerator. These will kick off in January. We can work with 2 agencies a month, and that's because we work really closely with you. And it's a program of masterclasses for leaders, strategists, designers. There's 3 separate tracks where we work with you really specifically about how to lead your agency through the AI transition, and strategists and designers on the tools, the IP impacts, all that kind of stuff. And then we have 2 months of coaching beyond those deep dives. So if you'd like any more information about that, all on our website. The full syllabus is on there. And if you're just a bit overwhelmed with all the AI hype and the huge amount of content out there, Tabitha mentioned Make earlier. I use Make to filter all the AI news that's out there to help tell me just the really useful stuff for the creative sector and for creative agencies specifically. So I go through that and digest it all and send it to you every couple of weeks. So if you'd like that curated news, sign up for our free newsletter. Fab. Let me just unshare that. If I
may, beautiful example of the AI sandwich.
Thank you. There is a lot of human input into that. Yeah, but it does save me a lot of time in going through all the publications. Yeah. So that just leaves me to thank both of you, Tabitha and Charlotte. Thank you so much for sharing a really candid insights. I know how helpful it is for other creative professionals to hear those. So thank you very much from me and from everyone listening.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks so much.
Fab. Well, take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye.